Why should you, as a tenant, live in fear that you could be put out on the streets with your family, with your pets?
One thing we know is that there are a small minority of landlords who abuse no-fault evictions. That's why they're going.
After years of delays, the Renters Reform Bill is finally here. What is it? Only a historic shake-up of tenants' rights that will give renters more rights than they've had at any point since the 1980s. Housing Secretary Michael Gove is heading up the new legislation, and it will help people like Belinda, who lives in the house behind me. She is a mother of two who pays more than £2,000 a month in rent for a home that is covered in mould and damp. And when she complained about it, she saw a for sale sign put up outside. This is why renting reform is so urgent. It will empower people like Belinda to complain about poor conditions without fear of being evicted. Belinda, you've lived in this house since 2018 and there are lots of problems with it. What are they?
Where do I start? So we have wobbly taps, we had strips on stairs falling off, which I had to gorilla tape. We had a back door which we couldn't lock for months. We had a bathroom door which a friend of my daughter got herself locked in, so we had to get a locksmith. We have black mold, we have other damp issues. We have a wall crumbling down outside. We have windows which we can't close after opening them. We had a dishwasher which failed to work, and it took a long time before it was replaced. We had a fridge packing in during a heat wave.
How much are you paying to live in this house of horrors?
We pay, let's say, more than £2,500 a month.
And have you complained to the landlord?
Of course, yes. Well, not so much as a complaint. I have reported issues, just kind of, as a good tenant, I would tell them that we had issues. We sent emails constantly about all these things, and the response usually is no response.
How does that make you feel?
Very annoyed, but also very, I'm hurt, we have to work hard for our money too, we pay a decent rent, we look after the property, and I just feel abused as well.
What do you think of the government's announcement today that they are going to stop landlords evicting renters like yourself who complain about problems and report them to landlords?
I think it's a great move, it's a first step, I'm sure there's lots of other results of this to make, maybe landlords pulling out of the market because of fear. On the other hand, I think, it's a good thing, because why should you, as a tenant, like I said, you're paying your rent on time, you're looking after a property as if it's your own, live in fear that you could be put out on the streets with your family, with your pets, anytime. So I think it's brilliant.
But it could take years to make its way into law as it moves through Parliament. You're living with these issues right now. Can you afford to wait a couple of years?
Well, I have to dip into my savings now, probably, first of all, to continue living here, because at some stage it's either I have to find another property, which probably more expensive than what I pay now, or the landlord will put up the rent and I'll probably put up with the issues for a higher price, just for peace of mind.
Michael Gove's reforms sound great, but there are a few flies in this ointment. All is not well in Westminster. The Conservative Party is currently at war with itself over housing. Some MPs really don't want to build the homes that Britain urgently needs. So what does Michael Gove have to say to his own MPs? Michael Gove, 11 million renters have been waiting years for these historic reforms to private renting, but some of your Conservative colleagues tell me that they're worried about the rights of landlords. We've got around 2 million landlords. What would you say to your colleagues?
Well, I think the relationship between tenant and landlord is one of the most important that we have, because landlords care for their properties, and the overwhelming majority of landlords care very well for their tenants too. But we do, when we have such a big private rented sector, and as you know, it's doubled in size over the course of the last 20 years, we do need to make sure that it works better. One thing we know is that there are a small minority of landlords who abuse Section 21, no-fault evictions. That's why they're going.
I'm hearing from people who are receiving above inflation rent increases. Why are you not introducing a rent cap?
Well, The overwhelming majority of people have seen their rent increase less than inflation, but what we can't do is introduce a rent freeze, because we know that the laws of supply and demand mean that if you had a legislative means of fixing rents, then the number of new rental properties that were coming onto the market, the number of new properties that would be built, would diminish. So while it might give temporary relief, in the medium to long term it would be bad for the many people who will need homes in the future.